Welcome, Zach, to our channel. So today we have Zac Bradford, who is the founder of New York Vocal Coaching Australia. And so he has studied in New York and all around the States, and then has brought the skills he's learned back to Australia to teach us and share it with us here as well, which is pretty cool. So welcome, Zac, today, and thank you for joining us on Know Me Now.
Thank you so much for having me, Chloe. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And I'm sure everyone who's listening today will be blessed by what you have to share. Got a wealth of knowledge to share with us today. But before we get into that, we're going to jump into a hot seat round. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions, and I want you to answer them as quickly as you can, and trying to just think on the top of your head. So these questions might make you sweat a little bit.
The weirdest food I've ever eaten is haggis.
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 A bit about that experience in 10 seconds.
Sure. So I was really nervous about having haggis when I was in Scotland because of what's in it. You can Google it if you want to know. But anyway, I was really scared, built it up, and I went, I'm going to make myself do it. So I ordered a haggis lasagna, and I ended up loving it. And in fact, I ordered it 2 nights in a row. So it actually can be quite nice if prepared well. One of the most notable times was when I was first on stage playing a lead role in Pirates of Penzance. Back in 2001, I played the sergeant. It was my first leading role, and I remember being super nervous and sweaty as a 12-year-old, I think, or 13-year-old at the time, and it went well. I'm gonna go with the Big Mac meal.
Can you give us a reason?
Oh, look, beef and cheese. You know, you can't go wrong with beef and cheese.
It up with the ice cream and the smoothie or whatever comes with the meal.
Look, I'd probably prefer the Big Mac on its own, but if I had to choose, I think I would probably still, I'd go with that one. Running. About a couple of years ago, I started to take up jogging, running, and I find it really therapeutic. I go for longer runs most days, and find it's a good time to clear my head, but also just to get outside. I'm inside quite a lot. So yeah, I really enjoy running. I would have to say my family have been the greatest influence. I've had many mentors and teachers who have influenced me and inspired me over my lifetime, but I think my family have been the longest and most prominent part of that. So yeah.
Fantastic. And thank you for enduring our hot seat round today.
You're welcome. I'm going to be thinking about those Big Macs mixed up with ice cream.
Yeah, hopefully you don't have too many nightmares about that.
We'll see.
Now we're going to move into some of the deeper questions about what you do and how you've come to be where you're at now. So to start with, could you tell us about your earliest musical experience as a child?
Sure. So my earliest experience was singing at church. I sang a solo at church, and I did that, from time to time growing up. But I guess my more memorable, that I have better memories of, it was probably when I was about 12 or 13. I mentioned Pirates of Penzance, but around that age, I started performing regularly and doing musicals, probably a handful of musicals at least a year. So those are some of my early memories, and where I really started to develop a passion for performing and being on stage and the arts.
Do you remember from those years whether there was one particular thing that you enjoyed performing the most, whether it be playing an instrument or acting or singing? Do you remember having a favorite?
To be honest, I really found it hard to choose. I think there was kind of these different phases. There was that phase, again, informally when I was young, but when I was about 12, 13, I got really serious about being on stage, and I liked making people laugh. So I usually like to play comedic roles or the villain. And then when I was about 15 or 16, I was playing the guitar and started to write songs. By the time I was about 16, I started to gig at school and for fundraising events and stuff. And so at that point, I was really enjoying writing and playing like jazz gigs and so on. But I also did musicals, so I really found it hard to choose.
Then just going on from that into maybe your late teen years, your early 20s. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the musical studies you did?
Sure. So right out of school, I studied jazz voice and graduated with a bachelor in jazz voice and performance. And then from there, I went on to study vocal pedagogy, graduating with a master's in vocal pedagogy. So for those who don't know, pedagogy or vocal pedagogy is the art and science of voice teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied that, and then a couple of years after that, moved to New York and studied voice science at NYU, where I further delved into the world of acoustics, anatomy, physiology, all the fun stuff.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, you know, while I continue to perform, voice teaching is what I believe to be my calling and my passion. And so all of that study in terms of the technical stuff has really helped to provide a foundation for what I do in my day-to-day work teaching, which is to understand how the voice works on all these different levels, and then to be able to help people using that knowledge of how to get their bodies to make sound easily, and ultimately helping them unlock their voice in whatever genre or style they choose to sing in.
Fantastic. And you just mentioned about how you love teaching and you love unlocking that in people. I guess the potential that they have as performers and as singers. But one question I have for you then is, you mentioned how you loved performing when you were younger. So how did you make that transition from a performance focus to a teaching focus?
Sure. Well, I guess it happened over time. It was gradual. It wasn't like one day I kind of said, I'm going to make a big shift. But I guess for a long time while I was studying, I was also performing regularly, like I said, at weddings, corporate functions, cafes, festivals, etc. And I was also teaching part-time. So I was studying, teaching, and performing all simultaneously. And when I started in 2010, I think it was, my graduate studies in vocal pedagogy, and I started to understand a little bit about how the voice worked, and I was able to observe lots of really good teachers, I was really hooked on this idea of being able to help people with this really factual body of knowledge, understanding how something works kind of in a mechanical way, but then using that to help people achieve what they want to achieve. Because singing is, while it does involve mechanics of technique, it also obviously involves the whole person and their goals and you know what they want to express and so on. So I really love that idea of tying together, you know, this instrument which I've for a long time been baffled by. You know, when you pick up a guitar or a piano, you can look at a note and you go, I want to play a middle C, or I want to play this chord that I can put my fingers on. But with the voice, there was a lot of mystery. And I found that in my teaching, but in my own voice. So when I started to understand a little bit about how it worked, I found that I was really driven to want to know more so that I could help people more. And that's been my experience, is that the more I've delved in and learned how things worked, then gone to really good teachers who have been doing it a long time. And I've had many wonderful mentors who have taken the time to show me things and let me observe them. I've really been able to help more and more people and more consistently. So there was a certain point, I guess, at which back to the performance switching to teaching, there's a certain point at which I chose to continue studying, and just by the fact that I was studying a lot more and needed to stay up and do assignments, I wasn't able to take as many gigs. So I started to gig less and study more and teach more. But at a certain point, I also kind of made the conscious decision that teaching, the drive to teach and to help people in that scenario was more of a driving force than my drive and passion to be on stage. I still love being on stage when I get the opportunity, but it was just kind of a shift in that passion. Also the lifestyle, I think I enjoy my nights at home more often than not. And so that was also part of it too. I love performing when I get the opportunity, but I do like having a routine and so on.
Okay, Zach, so we've moved into another part of our interview here today, and we've actually walked into a lesson setting. As you can see, I'm now got my earphones on, like I'm in an actual lesson with you, so you can hear me clearly, and you've still got yours on to make sure that we can hear you clearly as well. And you've been sharing about your journey as a performer into becoming a vocal coach. But could you actually show us now a lesson with me? And you could use me as an example student to go through some of the exercises and the songs that you would do in a lesson.
Of course. Well, let's start with a warm-up or an exercise, and we'll start with the trill. How about a lip trill to begin with, and then we might move on to a bit of song work after that. But let's start with a trill, just moving down the scale. here, actually, I know you know what a trill is, but for those who don't know what a lip trill is, it's where you blow air and set your lips into vibration. So we're going to do that with voiced sound on this scale. Excellent, Chloe. Let's switch to a tongue trill up on these higher ones here. Excellent. Can you create a slightly taller mouth shape with the tongue trill? One more time, just a little more space between your teeth. Do you feel the difference in that?
Yeah, I do. I definitely feel that I still felt like it was a little bit shaky at the bottom, but it was more consistent coming from the top notes and like moving down rather than jumping from like the front of the face to the back of the face.
Yeah, very smooth on the top and much smoother on the way down. Let's take a deep breath before doing the next one. Then... Yeah, one more time, just a little more spreading of the teeth. Well done, Chloe. Nice. Let's do the same thing as we descend. That's it. See if you can keep this area just a little bit more energized. That's it. Just spend a little bit more time on that first note before heading down. Well done. Two more just like that. Let's do that one more time. And can you tap your cheekbones here? I want you just to think about keeping this area in your cheeks just a little bit more engaged. Well done. How does that feel?
Yeah, it felt a lot better.
Excellent. So the tongue trill really works well for you. What did it feel like when you started to use that, and particularly with the adjustment of creating this space between your teeth? What did that feel like?
Mm-hmm. Well, at the start, before you told me to take deep breath, which seems like common sense, but then when you think about so many other things, you kind of forget. But before you told me to take that deep breath, it definitely helped already. But then once I took that deep breath, I feel like because now I was regulating how much was coming out and kind of having a consistent amount of breath coming out with the taller shape, it wasn't hard to keep the sound, I guess, consistent either. It kind of just came out with the breath easily. And there was really no pressure in the back of my throat or anything like that. So, yeah, it felt really good.
Excellent. Yeah. So we have to, take into consideration that the voice involves all these different systems of the body, including the breath, and we have to make sure that we have enough fuel in the tank, so to speak, for those longer phrases. But also the way in which you shape things is going to help to, like you said, regulate that air. Mm-hmm. And when you find the right balance of those different elements, things start to feel pretty easy. And that sounded really smooth, not only on the top, but all the way to the bottom. You had more stability as you took in those deeper breaths and maintained that shape. So good on you, Chloe.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's have a look at applying an idea like this to perhaps a song you're working on. What would you like to look at?
I'm working on a song by Sorrel Amy titled Just the Two of Us. So we could go through the chorus of that if you're happy to.
Yeah, let's have a look at that. So starting here.
Yes. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Oh, just the two of us. Building castles in the sky. Just the two of us. You and I.
Well done, Chloe. How does that feel?
Yeah, that feels pretty good. There are a couple little shaky bits like that leap, but it feels pretty good to start with.
Okay, well, let's see if we can make that feel a little smoother and easier for you. Can we use the tongue trill, which we just explored a little bit, and trill through the phrases with
Okay.
that awareness of that lift? So we might even add the cheekbone tap if that's okay too. Nice. How does that feel, Chloe?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, quite vibrant and smooth in terms of the release of the flow. So that would be a first step, and provided that feels comfortable and easy, then we would take that idea and see if we can transition that release of sound into the lyrics. So starting with the and then going right into your lyric there.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Oh, just the two of us. Building castles in the sky. Just the two of us. You and I.
Nice, Chloe. Really good start. How'd that feel that time?
Yeah, I felt it was a little bit hard to reach the high notes. But yeah, I definitely felt that having that trill going into it helped me to have the breath I needed to get into the groove.
Yeah, so a little bit harder on the high notes without doing the tongue trill all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the tongue trill sets up a couple of things. One of them is this lift, this feeling like, structures, including the tongue and the cheeks, are a little more lifted. But the other is the breath flow. So let's see. Let's isolate actually that one phrase on the tongue trill. That's it. If you do the whole phrase with your teeth just a little further apart, and then go through the notes after that part too. Yeah, like that. Let's do that one more time, just a little slower, particularly as you're moving through the top part. Well done, Chloe. Now the same thing. Castles in us. And I want you to see if you can carry over both the feeling of release of air, but also the space in your mouth.
Castles in the sky.
Nice, very nice. Let's do that one more time. Just get used to that feeling. Can you just do the tongue trill on that one note up here? Yeah, with your teeth a little further apart. There you go. Can you go right into the word in?
In the sky.
Yeah, like that. That was wonderful. What did that feel like?
Yeah, a little better.
Yeah. So finding that space. Can you see yourself in the camera, in the mirror?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Just take a look at your mouth shape as you do that one more time.
In the sky.
Good. Now see if you can copy and paste that as you do. Castles in the sky.
Castles in the sky.
Good, really good. I think that the best one was still the one in isolation, but you can see how that starts to become a lot smoother as you put those elements together.
Yeah.
So really good. Any thoughts on that? Any questions?
Yeah, well, I guess my thoughts are just that, as I practice this, I believe that, I would start to get more smoothly transitioning from using the tool to just doing it naturally without using the tool. So, for example, naturally having the right mouth shape and the right space between my teeth without doing the tongue trill before I go into it. So yeah, I definitely think that the practice side of things would definitely help after this, going on the next week or so.
For sure, and that's it. While you might feel a difference immediately when you do the tongue trill, and a noticeable difference when you do certain parts in isolation, it really does take that consistent mindful practice over time to get these things to become habitual. But really good steps there, Chloe. So really great changes, sounding great.
Thank you.
Well, if there's anyone who's listening to our interview right now and are wanting to sing and develop their voice more like what you're talking about here, is there somewhere where you recommend they go to start?
Sure. Well, without seeming like I'm trying to just self-promote, you can go to australia.newyorkvocalcoaching.com, and we offer lessons online as well as lessons in person, not during this COVID time, but when restrictions are lifted. And then you can also see our sister company in New York who also offer in-person lessons over there, as well as the instructors there offering online lessons. So that's a great place to go. But we also have a lot of free resources, a YouTube channel, as well as tips on our social media pages. So I'd encourage you to check those out too if you're looking for voice tips and other useful hints and resources.
As musicians and as creatives, what do you recommend we do to best utilize this time?
You can find something that's already in your routine, like brushing your teeth or eating a meal or exercise, and tag your practice or your music time before or after something that's already in your routine. It'll likely make it a lot easier for you to be consistent with that. But beyond, I guess, the practice and the kind of more disciplined stuff, I would say exploring other art forms can be really useful. I'll never forget in an interview that I love watching, there's a Stephen Sondheim interview. Stephen Sondheim, the great musical theatre composer.
Right.
And he talks about the fact that he's fascinated by experts at different crafts, regardless of what craft. He just finds it fascinating. So if he finds a documentary that's about milking a cow, and it's, they're demonstrating how to milk a cow, and it's an expert cow milker, then there's something to be learned there by an expert at their craft if they've dedicated a lot of time to that craft and if they're passionate about it. And so I think the same can go for if you're, again, reading a work of fiction or watching, even just reading an article in a field unrelated. If you're looking at how someone who does something with excellence approaches their craft, you can often take certain principles and then apply them to what you do as a musician or a teacher. And I find that to be true.
Okay, Zac, so as part of your teaching studio, you offer a lot of online lessons, and at the moment you're only offering the online lessons. But I'm sure that sometimes you would have some challenges that you face. Can you tell us maybe a bit about these and how you combat them, especially for those who are wanting to get into some online teaching?
Sure, yes. So the two main issues that you'll probably come up against in online teaching is the latency issue, which you get with pretty much all platforms that I'm aware of, Skype, FaceTime, Google Hangouts, etc. And then the other thing is the connection issue. So first with the latency issue, a good way to combat that is by having students have backing tracks on their end. So if they're going to sing a song, have them purchase a backing track from pianotracks.com or musicnotes.com or any of those sites that sell sheet music and backing tracks. YouTube also often will have backing tracks. In terms of exercises, and obviously in person, you can play an exercise on the piano in real time with a person. But because of the latency, it often helps to play the exercise and then have the student repeat it back to you. Or every now and then, if a student wants, I'll play it through a series of exercises on the piano, have them record it on their end, and then they can play it back, or they can practice if they'd like to have the piano playing without their voice on it for their home practice. That can be really helpful. In regards to the connection, it can be helpful to have backups in a few ways. The first is having a backup with your devices. So if you've got a phone and a tablet and a computer, it might be useful to have all of those at your ready with the different platforms downloaded. Because sometimes, for whatever reason, the signal seems to work better on one device over another. Having multiple platforms I found to be really useful. So I tend to go with Skype and FaceTime. One, because they're really user-friendly and most people have FaceTime or Skype. Other good ones are WhatsApp, Zoom, even Facebook video works sometimes. A lot of people have Facebook, so that's a good backup one to have. But sometimes if one is glitchy, I'll just say, let's switch over because we're hearing an echo or something like that. And quite often when you go to the second, or if not the second, definitely the third platform, connection seems to be fine. Something that can also be helpful too is if you're using your home internet connection and Wi-Fi is not working, it can be helpful to plug your computer or your device directly into your router. I found that often really helps. And you just minimize the chance that there's going to be echoing or freezing and things like that. But if that doesn't work, then you've also can go on your phone and use your phone's, either your phone's hotspot via your laptop, or you can just use your phone's connection instead of your Wi-Fi. So you've got so many different options, but if you have backups, smooth sailing for the rest of the lesson. At the moment, most of my students are in Brisbane, Australia, where I'm based here. However, I have a lot of students in New York. I was obviously working there for a good number of years and continue to work with many of the students who live in New York City, as well as other parts of the US, LA, Chicago, Texas. But I've had students all over the place. I've had students in places like Guam and Iceland, the UK, France, Japan, Thailand. It's a really exciting thing to be able to connect with people all over the world and sing. Well, I had someone get up a while ago. I think it was the student. I can't remember whether they were somewhere in Europe, and they got up at something like 4 a.m. to do a singing lesson. So my hat's off to them.
So we have finished our first interview on Know Me Now today, and Zac is here, and we're going to get ready to sign off together. But before we do, we just want to talk about all the subscriptions below and the comments. So please make sure you check out those links. And want to hear more about Zac and his teaching and his music, please check out those links below, his websites. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.